Hello, and welcome to episode 112 of the Mo Money Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Morehouse. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the podcast. Only a few more weeks of the show, and then I'll be wrapping up the season. But I have only the best episodes to come to celebrate the end of another season and reaching over 100 episodes, which still kind of blows my mind. So my next guest is Hilary Hendershott, and she is awesome. We are going to talk about personal finance, but also being mindful with your money, which I love. Now, she is a financial coach. She has her MBA and her CFP designation. And if that weren't enough, she also has a website, hilaryhendershott.com, where she writes a ton of helpful personal finance articles. And she's a podcast host herself at the Profit Boss radio show. And it is fabulous to have her as a guest on my show. But before I get to that interview, I'm excited to share that support for this episode comes from the Simply Cash Preferred Card from American Express. It is ranked the top cashback credit card from Rewards Canada, and card members can earn 5% cash back on purchases for the first 6 months up to $300 and 2% on all purchases once the welcome rate ends. Visit amex.ca/compare simplycash to learn more all about it. And of course, I'll include some more info in the show notes, so make sure after you listen to this episode, go to jessicamorehouse.com/112. All right, now let's get to that interview with Hilary. Thanks, Hilary, for joining me on the show. I'm excited to chat with you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks, Jessica.
You're welcome. I'm excited to chat with a fellow podcaster. It's always a pleasure.
We give good audio.
We really do. We know what we're doing. So let's start off with getting to know you a bit more. You have an amazing story. I absolutely love what you're doing in the personal finance space, and especially with women. But I'd love to know how this all started for you.
Thank you. Yeah. So many years ago, I was mentored into the financial advisory business by my father. And so a few years after that began, I'm a certified financial planner, working with millionaires and multimillionaires during the day. He had a very successful practice. And so there I am one day, and I pull my convertible BMW into the Chevron station to fill the tank with gas. And I put the nozzle in the gas tank, and I run my credit card, and it gets declined. Mm-hmm. And then I run another credit card, and that's declined, and another credit card, and that's declined. And ultimately, I was not able to even buy a tank of gas that day because I had emptied my retirement accounts and my bank accounts and maxed out my credit cards trying to pay for a mortgage that I couldn't afford. Mm-hmm. And I was a chronic overspender. And I decided on my walk of shame home from the Chevron station, I had to leave my BMW there.
Oh my God.
That I was going to figure this thing out, that here I was, I had a degree in economics. Again, I was a certified financial planner, and I had really good intentions. Like, I intended to be financially successful. Mm-hmm. I just had really, really bad results. And so I said, kind of like, I know I can figure this out if I put my mind to it. And I bet if I can figure it out for myself that I can give it away. So that ultimately is what I did. I became an expert in behavioral finance and kind of money psychology, and was able to apply what I learned to my own life. And now I've integrated that into my own practice and my brand and my coaching. And so I say, no matter where you are financially, I've either been there or I know someone who has. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a very judgment-free zone. I mean, we people relate to overspenders like they're short-sighted or irresponsible or bad people. And I just don't believe that. I think that we're all kind of coded with this money script. And if you don't know what your money, I call it a money operating system. If you don't know what that is, you're kind of helpless to do anything about it. So that really is where it all got started. I mean, unless you want to go back all the way to childhood.
Well, we could. I'm so curious, since you mentioned that you, had an issue with overspending. Did you, and now you're, very much integrate this psychology into the personal finance. Did you ever kind of figure out what the root of that was, or was it just, you just didn't know any better?
Yeah, no, there's definitely a root, and it's counterintuitive. So what happened is, in my childhood, I happened to have a mother who worked in a hospital laboratory. She was a good earner, but she's also a really good saver.
Mm-hmm.
So there was not a lot of extra cash for me to have the things that I wanted. And, she would only give me $5 for birthday gifts for my friends, and like I had to wear like Payless brand
Mm-hmm.
high top tennis shoes. And so for me, what became true about money is that there's never enough of it. And that kind of scarcity money operating system is very common. It's one of the most common
Mm-hmm.
money operating systems. There's never enough money. And so if you're listening and you just want to know, is that your money operating system? Well, just ask yourself, is that your experience of money? Because we manifest our belief about money. All the things we believe are ultimately superstitions about
Mm-hmm.
money. I mean, money is an agreement. It's literally man-made. It's a blank slate. It doesn't have any nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have all these superstitions that we believe, like money is the root of all evil. It's bad to want money. Rich people are greedy. Like none of those things are objectively true. They're just stories that we believe and live into. And so I grew up with the imprint, there's never enough money. And then in my 20s, I start earning money.
Mm-hmm.
And so how you manifest there's never enough money when you have money in your bank account is you spend it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so when money, I always had the experience that money burned a hole in my pocket, and the only thing there was to do was spend it. And I had some sort of parallel beliefs that I wanted to be perceived as rich because being rich was
Mm-hmm.
successful, and that how to be perceived as rich is to spend money. And I had to learn that actually being rich is about not spending money.
Mm-hmm. That is so interesting. I find like it can kind of go two ways because I have a kind of a similar background, and I know lots of people who have a similar background where there wasn't a lot of money growing up, and either they become huge spenders later on because they never got the chance to have money or spend money when they were younger, or they go the opposite route where they're very frugal and they kind of hoard their money because they're afraid that it'll run out because they never want to kind of go back to the poor old days. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and I think you'll find that those people who spend because they never got the same money operating system that I did.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who you say hoard their money, there's something that happened that actually made them fearful. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not just that there was a scarcity of money in their
Mm-hmm.
childhood, but that something actually happened. I give you an example. Someone I know had, when she was in grade school, her father, who was a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
left the family, 4 kids, and the mother wasn't working and didn't send money home.
Wow.
And so she got really quickly that money, if you don't have money, you're not all right.
Yeah.
Okay. And when I met her, she was in her early 20s and she already had $60,000 saved because she couldn't let go of money.
Right.
She white knuckled it. Right. So when you say
Mm-hmm.
hoarding is a fear.
Mm-hmm.
And her fear was that she would end up in that situation again where they didn't know where, dinner was going to come from. And so it always sort of goes back. I mean, in pop psychology and in real psychology, it always goes back to the childhood,
Oh,
right?
for sure. Oh, for sure. It's fun. And the reason I mention that is like, I think I do have money hoarding tendencies. I've gotten better, but I do find it hard to let go. I find so much more satisfaction in saving than spending. Whereas my husband's kind of the opposite. He does enjoy spending more than saving. But we have very kind
Yeah.
of similar, we both grew up in kind of, middle class families, and we got everything we needed, but we certainly didn't, didn't get everything that the other kids got. Then we were always, but he kind of has a bit of a different, I don't know, I guess operating system than I do.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah,
tough because how do you navigate
I
that as a
know.
couple? And ultimately it has to be around a plan.
Exactly. No, I think how we have, I mean, it was different when we were dating. We kind of just kept everything separate. But now that we've been married for a couple of years, we've really kind of, we realize we're very different when it comes to like what money kind of means to us, like at the root of it. But I think how we can come together is when we create goals together, and then we can, more bigger picture stuff kind of makes more sense to us.
Right. And and I'm saying this because it's going to help your listeners, is
Mm-hmm.
you have the opportunity as a couple to sit down and really look at the roots of
Mm-hmm.
those tendencies. And the kind of broad strokes analysis would say, well, Jessica's better with money because she prefers to save it than spend it. And, and your husband is more sort of freewheeling or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, until you're free in your relationship with money, you're sort of bound by that past relationship. And so you can both experience freedom and success if you're
Mm-hmm.
able to not just like romanticize your past and that
Mm-hmm.
money operating system, but maybe take steps to transcend it.
Mm-hmm. So how does one, you could have mentioned like being free, like how does one get to that point?
Oh
Is that a
gosh.
long journey?
Go girl. No, I'll make it short.
Okay.
And we'll make it parsable because it's experiential. You're not
Yeah.
going to get it by listening to this particular episode of this
Mm-hmm.
podcast, but you can only alter because your mind is a very powerful thing, and language is almost prescriptive when it comes to our experience of life. And so you have to alter your scripts about money and yourself and your life. And that happens when the rubber meets the road. So you need to go produce results that are in direct contrast to your money operating system. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, I put, first of all, I was very specific about the language I would use with money. I will not ever say I can't afford that. I will
Mm-hmm.
never say money doesn't grow on trees. I will never say, rich people are greedy. I
Yeah.
just won't. I won't say those things. And I took on a very specific financial automation plan,
Mm-hmm.
just an elaborate sort of pay yourself first kind of a
Mm-hmm.
plan, but that didn't require me to use spreadsheets or track, like categorize expenses. That's not my
Mm-hmm.
nature.
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't love that kind of budgeting. So I just filled a bank account with
Mm-hmm.
my quote unquote allowance, and
Yep.
that's all I spend. And it works. And then very quickly, it got to be that my reality was, it used to be every time I would log into my bank accounts, there would be about 10% less money in the balance than
Mm-hmm.
I thought there should be. And then that altered, and now there's about 10% more. And that continues to this day. Like every time I log into my bank accounts, I'm like I have
Mm-hmm.
this reaction like, wow, there's more money in here than I thought there would be. And
Mm-hmm.
that's in direct contrast to there's never enough money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of teach a system, sort of like the 8 principles of wealth, which
Mm-hmm.
have to do with turning that whole thing on its ear. I mean, you learn to negotiate for your money and ask for discounts on things and increase your income and invest with an evidence-based methodology. But it comes down to an internal locus of control, or taking responsibility for your results. And so I think in my experience, you can completely alter not only your experience of money, but your results around money in about 6 to 9 months. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't happen instantaneously because you have to interact with the reality of money. Like, money has a real nature to it, and you have to really look at it with new eyes. I
Mm-hmm.
hope that helps.
No, absolutely. And I really liked when you mentioned the language you use about money, because I'm absolutely like, I never even thought about this, I think consciously, but it's true. I never use the terminology or the phrase, I can't afford it, because
Mm,
I know some people that do. And it really drives me crazy, because to me, when they say it, it sounds like they're kind of the victim, like, well, I never got enough money, so I don't have it and I can't do that. It's like, well, you can earn more, you can save more, there's things that you can do. And it is very kind of like they're not taking responsibility for that money isn't just given to some people and not for some. I mean, you can kind of do what you want with it if you really take action. And I think a lot of people don't think of it, or they're just used to being like, well, I was born in this kind of income tax bracket and I'm still in there, and that's just how it is. It's like, well, not necessarily. You can change your fortune, you can change your
yeah.
wealth.
I mean, what they're saying is that money is more powerful than they are.
Exactly.
And they are the ones who determine that,
Mm-hmm.
because money isn't anything. So another a thing you can say to replace I can't afford it is, how can I work that into my plan? Or
Exactly.
if you're not going to buy it, just say I'm not going to buy that.
Exactly. Or how can I afford this? Let's figure it out. But yeah, I always am more of a how than a I can't. I hate that, the just the word or just like the mindset that I cannot do something. But that's like
Yeah.
that's like beyond personal finance. That's just me. I'm always trying to like kind of push the boundaries and see how far I can go. And I think that's important too.
I mean, money is you don't have a financial life per se. You have a life. And so
Exactly.
the philosophies that you face life with are the philosophies you're going to face money with. So I think that's spot on.
No, I love that you have a specific kind of focus on educating women because I think that is so important. I think for a long, long time, the focus was on, the men were kind of the money managers. They were the investors, all this stuff, which is ridiculous because we're in 2016. And still, a lot of people still have this mindset that, oh, it's okay. My husband or my partner or whatever deals with it. And I really love that you're focusing on educating women to take control of their money. And, when you have money and you have your own money, you have independence, you have options, you have choices, which is I'm all on board for. But I'd love to know why specifically it means so much to you and why you want to kind of go in that direction.
Yeah, so much.
I know.
Like there's that speech by Steve Jobs who says you can only understand your path by looking backwards on it, like by looking in hindsight. There's so many things. I mean, I think when I was young, for various reasons, didn't have the skill set to have girlfriends, and I always longed for a circle of female friends. And when I was able to do that, when I sort of moved past those blocks and was able to have girlfriends in my life, because I hadn't had them before and now I do, I'm always so grateful. Like I'm just present to feeling blessed. Because by the way, it's the same way with money, because I'll never forget what it felt like to not be able to pay for a damn tank of gas. And for a long time, so my platform is not about anti-man. It's not. I'm not man hating. I'm married to a man that I love very much, and I am a feminist. But again, it's not about being anti-man. It's that for a long time, and you hit the nail on the head. Wall Street has been by men for men. And I hear so many women saying, going to see the financial advisor is kind of like getting a really patronizing speech from my dad.
Yep. Been there. I've been there. And it's still, I like this year. And I'm like, are we really? This is 2016 and this is still happening? Yeah.
Right. And I mean, honestly, I think that's just represents a lack. It's probably a combination of like a true lack of interpersonal knowledge and empathy and compassion on the part of the male financial advisor, and a naivete and a willingness to be criticized on the part of the woman. Now, and so it's like a two-pronged sort of problem. But empowering women is like why I'm here on the planet. I mean, it just is my sweet spot, my zone of genius. It's like what moves me, gets me up in the morning. I had a baby this year and people said, oh, all your priorities are going to change. And don't get me wrong, like that little girl has my heart. But no, I am here for more than one human being or two human beings. Like I created a mission to empower 1 million women to become millionaires. And that's like that's a reason to be on the planet.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
And truth be told, I believed as I was coming up into the business, I believed for a long time that I was the wrong age and the wrong gender. I would go to conferences and all I saw around me were guys who looked like my dad, like old white men, right? And I really, just to speak to that woman who's sitting in that room with that financial advisor who's naive and willing to be self-critical, that was me. I thought, who would hire me? Who would work with me? Like, I just don't look like these other guys. And then one day, as an errant thought traversed its way into my brain, and it said, yeah, but there's somebody out there looking for you. And it was like my world cracked open. And I don't know, something shifted like energetically in the world. I'm not very woo-woo at all, but I'm telling you, Jessica, like, I think 4 people called me and hired me, like the next week.
Wow.
My business just exploded in terms of growth, and I really got clear that this message is what I do. And also, a lot of my clients are married, right?
Mm-hmm.
So about 35% of my clients are men.
Really?
And yeah, and I call them uh, uh, modern men, sophisticated men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Evolved men.
Yeah.
I say you're evolved. But I think that, so the old marketing in the financial advisory space, and stop me if this isn't
No,
interesting to you,
no, this is so
but
interesting. Yeah.
if you talk if you look at the content that's financial advisor facing, that says what do your clients want, like how do you woo your clients and make them be loyal, what they want is exclusivity. They want to feel important. They want to sit in your big austere office and smell rich mahogany and
Mm-hmm.
leather bound books, and I think for women that's not necessarily the case. Like, yeah, I guess it's nice to feel exclusive, but
Mm-hmm.
where are we best? We're best in community. Like,
Exactly.
women want to be in tribes. We want to
Mm-hmm.
sit around with a glass of wine and dish.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I'm the person who's going to make it okay for women to sit around and dish about money, and for you to stand shoulder to shoulder with another woman and say, yeah, like or you're at 100,000, I'm at 1,000,000, but we're both going for the goal. Like, we're both going for the prize, and I'm going to support you and you're going to support me, and it's all good.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of my mission, is to create those communities and to make money a thing that we not only talk about but support each other to have, in the same way that we support each other to date and get
Mm-hmm.
married and have babies, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, and I totally agree with the community thing. I feel like, especially as I've gotten older, I've realized how important that is to have in my life. And without the, different pockets of communities I have, or the ones I've started, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I would be as fulfilled or as happy. And it's so nice talking to other people about what they're doing with their money, so it can motivate you to keep going. You don't feel alone. And I think that's another kind of issue. A lot of people are struggling with their finances because they don't know who to talk to. They feel alone. They feel like no one else is going through it, and they don't know, where to go. So I'm happy that you're on this mission to kind of rectify that.
Yeah, I mean, having those relationships, it just deepens and enriches your experience of life, and you don't have to be an expert in something to contribute to someone in that area, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in many ways, a lot of times, like especially online now, we try to learn from the experts. Well, if you're at the peak of your career, guess what? There's 100 steps for me to get there. I need to talk to the person who's just 5 steps ahead of me.
Exactly.
So that's, yeah, I think you get it.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. One thing I did want to also talk about was, a big portion, I think, of personal finance, especially with women, is, being financially independent and owning their money and understanding it. But, it is common to get into a relationship and break up or get a divorce. What are ways that women can protect themselves financially? Because I feel like I don't have this statistic, in my head, but I remember reading something specifically about when, couples, separate or divorce, it's usually the women that have to deal with the most financial repercussions.
Well, right, because typically the man is earning more,
Mm-hmm.
typically, not always, and the woman takes on what can be a mistake, is taking on the family home and caring for the kids. I mean, that's one of the big things, is if you're going to often fighting for the family home is a
Mm-hmm.
financial mistake,
Yeah,
because you got to make sure you have enough money to pay the mortgage, you
exactly.
know? Um, so I think first, the best thing you can do for yourself, whether or not you're ever going to be divorced, and I hope
Mm-hmm.
that no one has to go through an unwanted divorce, um, but you got to know, if you don't want to quarterback the money in the couple, and that's okay. If
Mm-hmm.
you're not the one setting the strategy, I would love it if you come to the table and be a partner in setting the strategy, but you have to know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So find those account statements, know where the logins are, know the passwords, understand approximately what are the balances, how much savings is happening, right? So that you at least know where the money is. Don't just sign the tax return that he puts in front of you you, actually understand, look at the front page of the tax return. What's our household income this year? Oh, so we have 200,000 in income, but only 4,000 in the bank. Where did it all go? Right? Just be inquisitive. Um, there's a superstition that men are better than women and boys are better than girls at math and numbers. And there's so many studies that have proved all that wrong. And you do not have to be an expert at numbers and finance to understand broad strokes what's happening in your financial life. So, so the question specifically, Jessica, was how do you protect yourself in a divorce? I'm clarifying.
Oh yeah, that's it. That's it. How
Okay.
can, if, obviously we don't want any, that to happen. It's a terrible thing to happen, but it does. So how can women, be, I guess protect themselves or, do what they can to make it, less financially hurting?
Yeah. So being savvy and being aware is the best thing you can do to protect yourself. Moving backward in the timeline a little bit, if you come to the relationship with assets, you have the opportunity to set those assets aside. For example, I have clients and I will call their IRA or IRA, I will call it sole and separate property. I think you're in Canada.
Yep.
And I don't know exactly the Canadian translation of that, but basically anything that you brought to the union can be set aside as an asset that would be yours if anything should happen to the union or the marriage. And inherited assets are the same way. Even if you're married, if you inherit something from your family, you can set that aside as long as he doesn't put money into the account. You can set money aside and that will be earmarked as yours if you choose not to use it on joint expenses. Now, that you don't have to do that, but that's an option that I always try to make people aware of. Now, if you're going to get into a divorce, you got to take stock. You got to understand what your expenses are. Choose your living place carefully because you don't want to go over budget. If you are earning less, and again, I don't know about in Canada, but in the United States, you can get what's called a temporary order for support. So, he does not have the right to, and you don't have the right to close and liquidate bank accounts. Do things that are going to be very, very financially destructive to your partner. Ultimately, even though your romantic partnership is ending, the more you can do to be very still in the financial partnership until it's officially dissolved, the better everyone's quality of life is going to be. And then, as you're going through the divorce, it's just this whole process of like taking stock of what there is. In California, we're a community property state. So, like you deserve half of the assets and half of the income. And if you earn more, you'll owe him some alimony or support and vice versa. It can be a very, very tricky time, a very emotional time. So if there is a way that you can find a support structure, someone to talk to, a coach, maybe I know there are financial divorce coaches out there, to be less emotional, frankly, about money, you're just going to be very glad in the future because you're making decisions now that'll impact you into the future. And so you just want to be careful and make sure you have a good head on your shoulders when you do that.
Absolutely. Now, I want to kind of end on a lighter note. But what I really love about I was on your website recently, and what I really love is there's a section about things that you believe in, and they're all, tailored to personal finance. And they're, if anyone wants to check it out, I'll include the link in the show notes. But basically, it's just very just positive and empowering to kind of get you excited about taking on your finances. But I'll just read a few and we can maybe kind of discuss a few of them because I think they're really great. So it's like, I believe you can be financially free. I believe in your economic independence. I believe you are always free to imagine, design, and create wealth in your life. I believe that wealth is well-being, which I really like that one. And I'll do one more. I believe having money creates options. So it seems kind of like the theme is, you are in charge of your life and you can be in charge of your money. And when you are in charge of your money, kind of the options, the opportunities are endless, which is something that I try to live by as well.
I think first of all, you're going to make me cry.
Oh
Like a good thing. Like it's very
no.
touching. First of all, I'm touched that you read that. Second,
Of
I'm touched
course, I
that you
loved
thought
it.
enough of it to read it here. I think that my calling is to be the voice for women that says, anything is possible. Like you can bring me any financial trauma, drama, mistake. You can tell me your sob story. I will be compassionate and empathetic. I will give you a hug, whether that is real or virtual. And the only thing I will ever say to you in response is you can have anything you want. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can decide now and you can take new actions and you can produce brand new results. And I have lots of stories and evidence that all that's true. But that's really my role is
Mm-hmm.
to be the voice of possibility for people, because man, money can be an emotional debilitating subject. If you
Mm-hmm.
look out in the media, if you talk to other people who are in debt or who are financially disempowered, that's just a danger zone. So I'm like the opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I mean, man, given where I came from financially, I mean, I had a $400,000 mortgage and a condo that was only worth 200. I
No.
had $40,000 of credit card debt. I got a car repossessed. I mean, I was a wreck, right? And including the value of the business that I own now, I definitely have a 7-figure net worth.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I've found my voice as it regards Wall Street and investing and money. And I mean, I think I am an example of all of that. Anything is possible-ness.
Mm-hmm.
And while talking about money and Wall Street and investing in Roth IRAs and Warren Buffett, that's all
Mm-hmm.
very unemotional.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, I am very inspired about what's possible in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. No, you're definitely up my alley here with all of this stuff. This is something that, I'm on a very similar mission, and it's exciting that there's lots of other amazing people like you out there to help people that are in need.
See, we were already in a wealth mastermind an international wealth
Yeah.
mastermind, and just found out about it.
I know. I know. How crazy. Well, thank you, Hilary, for joining me and chatting with me. It was awesome. I'm excited to listen to this episode, actually, after this recording, because it was so good.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
And that was episode 112 with the fabulous Hilary Hendershott, financial coach, MBA, and CFP, and host of Profit Boss Radio, a fabulous women and money podcast. So if you're listening and you're looking for another awesome podcast to listen to on your commute or whenever, highly recommend her Profit Boss Radio show. And of course, don't forget to check out her fabulous website, hilaryhendershott.com. I'm a big fan, so I'm going to also link to it and share some more info about her and what she's up to in the show notes. Another thing that you can find out in the show notes is more info about that Simply Cash Preferred card from American Express. It is ranked the top cashback card from Rewards Canada, and card members can earn 5% cash back on purchases for the first 6 months, up to $300, and 2% on all purchases once the welcome rate ends. Again, more info in the show notes, but also just go to amex.ca/comparesimplycash to learn more all about it. And as I mentioned, there's only a few more weeks of this podcast. And to be specific, only 2 more weeks. Next week, I will be interviewing the fabulous couple from His and Her Money. Love those guys. And then I'll be capping off this season 4 of the Mo Money podcast with a solo episode. I haven't done one of those since the beginning of this season, I think. My goodness, how did the time fly by without that happening? So much has happened in the past 6 months. So very excited to share that season ender solo episode with you. And if you're not already subscribed on iTunes, that is a great way to kind of look at the whole archive of all of the episodes I've released since I started this thing 2 years ago. But also, you know what I really love? I really love good old iTunes review. So if you are really enjoying what you're hearing, please take a few minutes after to go on your phone or your computer or whatever and leave me a iTunes review and let me know what you think. And I will give you a shout out, either next week or the week after, or in season 5 of the show, which will be sometime in the fall of 2017. So thanks again for listening, and I'll see you back here next Wednesday.